Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. The patch notes for patch 12.15 have been posted, which means it's time for us to count down the top 5 changes of this week's patch. As always, I'll be going through them and letting you guys know what you'll be looking forward to in the coming weeks and what's going to be the most impactful on the patch. 12.15 is a lot of smaller changes as Riot are trying to avoid some big changes in the run-up to Worlds, but there's still a lot for us to talk about. So let's go ahead and hop into our number 5 change here with the Rammus buffs. Now, Rammus is a champion that I've been feeling for quite some time is on the cusp of being just so good, especially with the change to his ultimate, giving him a more reliable way of actually gap closing on his intended targets. And I think that all of the buffs here are absolutely massive for his ultimate, making it significantly more reliable, significantly more available, because now it's a 90-second cooldown at all ranks, and by making it travel a lot faster, meaning it's really hard for enemy champions to react fast enough to dodge the dash, especially if it's used very close in. I think these are big usability changes to Rammus. I don't think they're going to have an impact on pro play, don't misunderstand, but I do think that they're very interesting, and I'm quite excited to see how they shake out. Our number 4 change on this week's patch is going to be the changes to First Strike. Now, First Strike has been very powerful on burst champions in particular, due to the fact that it not only gives them combat power, but also helps them snowball up a gold lead. And in particular, burst champions are getting more value out of this than poke champions, because burst champions are able to get a lot more damage done in the window of First Strike, and therefore generate a lot more gold. These changes here are going to make it slightly less good. You get less true damage, which also means you get less gold overall. I don't think they're going to be enough, but they're at least indicating that Riot is looking at First Strike and will potentially follow up with more changes as needed. Moving on to our number 3 change, I want to talk about the Gwen nerfs. Now, I believe it was only a couple of weeks ago where I talked about Gwen and how she was getting reworked to be less accessible in pro play and more accessible in casual play. And unfortunately, the pros have broken her yet again. She is still almost a pick ban champion professionally. Riot are tapping her down yet again by reducing the amount of true damage she gets off of her Q. This means that not only is she less rewarded for skillful play, but it also means that she is easier to itemize against. You can just build MR as opposed to having to also worry about max health. I don't want to call it a silver bullet. Same as I did with the last changes, I really didn't want to call that a silver bullet either, and it wasn't. This, I don't think, will do a lot to just completely remove Gwen from the metagame, but it will at least mean that she's a lot more vulnerable of a pick. Moving on to our number 2 change for 12.15, it is the Sivir changes. Now, Sivir has been very powerful as a late-game scaling AoE marksman. The 500 Sivir, or the 500 CS Sivir win condition is still totally alive and well, but Riot thinks she's doing that just a little bit too well, so they're nerfing down her late-game power as well as her ability to get there. Not only is some of her late game power removed, Spell Shield is a significantly longer cooldown now, but also she's losing some of that early game power as well. Spell Shield's cooldown was adjusted at early levels as well, as was On the Hunt, and she just gets less AD growth overall. This should mean that Sivir is both more vulnerable in the early phases of the game, as well as being less strong in the later phases of the game, both of which I think are fair things to nerf. Finally, and this is a bit of a broad category, the number 1 change on patch 12.15 are to energy champions. Now, there are 5 of these champions, in case you were unaware: Akali, Shen, Zed, Kennen, and Lee Sin, and they have all suffered quite a bit from the durability update. Energy being a very high regen but low pool resource means that these champions are very quickly running out of energy in the middle of team fights and not being able to then continue to cast spells, with everything taking longer to die. This is a huge disadvantage as opposed to what it was prior. As a result, Riot have basically taken a look at every single one of these champions and given them either reduced energy costs or just increased energy refund as well, in order to make it so that they feel a little bit better to play in a post-durability update world. Now, importantly to note here, I wanted to talk about Kennen, as Riot didn't actually touch Kennen's energy costs. They like where his energy costs are at. They don't want to change that. However, they did want to give Kennen some degree of buff. He's neither a lane bully currently, nor able to have an impact in the late-game teamfights that he's supposed to do very well in. As a result, Riot buffed up his W and his R, his 2 main AoE abilities, to help Kennen feel a little bit better in those AoE teamfight places where he's supposed to feel very strong. They didn't buff up his laning phase, which I think is fine. I'm never a fan when Kennen is metagame, especially top lane, but I do think it's fair for him to have a bit more of an oomph in the later game teamfights. I think that the biggest winners of these changes are, of course, Kennen and Shen. I think Shen is the kind of champion who can sit in fights for extended periods of time, and therefore is going to benefit a lot more from the energy regen on his E passive. As opposed to the other energy champions who got some changes, but I don't think benefit as much. But generally speaking, if you're playing an energy champion, they're going to feel a lot better to play, and if you're playing Kennen, he's going to feel much, much better to play. And that is going to be it for me today, guys. Those are the top 5 changes of patch 12.15. Let me know which changes you're most excited for down in the comments section below. I know I'm excited at least for more Gwen nerfs. I'm hoping she finally gets out of top lane, but you guys will have to let me know what you think of them down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days like today as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.